everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us on your Tuesday night for this awesome book launch event that we have going on here. My name is McKaylee. I work with Tattered Cover Bookstore. And what's amazing about this event is that not only do we have an awesome author here tonight, but we're also partnering with another bookstore. Vroman's Bookstore in Southern California and Tattered Cover are partnering on this event to celebrate the book launch for A Dog's Perfect Christmas by Bruce Cameron, W. Bruce Cameron. And so I am so excited to have you guys join us tonight. You know, we're all in a really tough times right now. And the fact that we are still around and still being able to do these events is because of you. Local bookstores, local restaurants, mom and pop shops, we need your help now more than ever. And because of your continued support throughout these difficult times and this difficult year, we've been able to continue events and continue doing all sorts of amazing services for the community. While it may be virtual, we're still here as a community space for you all. And I know that Vroman's is in the same boat. So all of you watching from California there too, make sure to visit your local independent bookstore at Vroman's. And Tattered Cover, we're here in Colorado, and we'd be happy to have you guys stop in. Make sure that when you're visiting local stores that you guys are wearing your masks over your mouth and your nose. It's just as important there. I want to let you know that signed copies of A Dog's Perfect Christmas are going to be available at Vroman's and Tattered Cover Bookstore. So you can either buy those online at our websites at vromans.com or tatteredcover.com, or you can always come into the store as well. And we'll be happy to get those copies for you guys. Thank you guys again for just continuing to support local independent bookstores. We really cannot thank you enough. It's because of you we get to do this program tonight. Also, just an FYI, for those who might need it, this video is enabled with closed captioning. So in order to activate that, all you have to do is on the screen that you're watching me on right now, you hover your mouse over it, and there's a button at the bottom that says CC. If you click that button, closed captioning is enabled if you want it or need it. So now I'm going to dive right in and get started with our guests of the hour here. So we're going to be having W. Bruce Cameron in conversation with Gary Goldstein. Gary Goldstein is a screenwriter, playwright, and freelance film reviewer for the Los Angeles Times. As a writer of many Christmas movies, a lifelong dog lover, and a fan of Bruce Cameron's books from the start, Gary couldn't be happier to moderate this conversation about A Dog's Perfect Christmas. And the man of the hour is W. Bruce Cameron. He's the #1 New York Times and USA Today bestselling author of A Dog's Purpose, A Dog's Way Home, and A Dog's Journey, all now major motion pictures. The Dog Master, the Puppy Tale series for middle grade readers, The Dogs of Christmas, The Midnight Plan of Repo Man, and others. He lives in California and can be found online at wbrucecameron.com. It's my honor to welcome both Bruce and Gary to the conversation, and we're going to have them turn on their microphones and their videos now. There we go, just getting our technology started here. Perfect. There's Bruce. Hello. And Gary.
All right. Hello, everyone.
Welcome. Thank you guys for joining us, and happy book birthday, Bruce.
Oh, thank you. The pub days don't come around all the time, and it's such a big deal. And we're excited, and we're just trying to figure out how we're not going out to dinner. We're not gonna. What are we gonna do to celebrate? I think we're gonna do what we did last night. You know, it's the way it is.
Well, we're happy that you're celebrating with us and Gary tonight, Tattered Cover and Vroman's, and we're just so excited to have you guys here. I want to tell everybody really quick, there will be a Q&A portion of this event after Gary and Bruce have their chat about the book. I'm going to pop back in after that, so make sure you think of your questions, and some of you are already very active in the chat. So that's where you're going to be typing in your questions, so keep them in mind as these two gentlemen talk. I'll let y'all take the show.
Thanks.
All right, thanks.
All right, Bruce Cameron. Bruce, I realized that A Dog's Purpose, your first novel, came out 10 years ago. I know you for more than 10 years. There when the book came out. It's just amazing what's happened to you in your career. It's so fantastic. You know, so well deserved. What's it like now? I mean, what's your life like now from 10 years ago to now? Not that you didn't have a lot of success before that, and you're a busy man, a busy writer, but you know, it's 20 books, 21, what is it, 21 books since 2010?
So I think A Dog's Perfect Christmas is my 27th published book.
God, you snuck another 6 in there. Okay.
Right.
I knew you were fast. That fast.
You know, so I wanted my whole life to do this. And my goal, like I remember writing a what am I going to be when I grow up thing, an essay in like 6th grade. And I said, I'm going to be a New York Times bestselling novelist. Like, that's how specific it was.
New York Times bestselling novelist. Okay.
Yeah, I had it all mapped out. Well, I probably said #1 New York Times bestseller because I was just driven. But then I failed. I mean, my whole adult life, I had a whole separate life. I was in finance with a small family-owned company called General Motors, and I wrote software, and I was a project manager and HR director. I did all kinds of stuff just to keep the food on the table. I had 3 kids and a bunch of dogs. So it really took my whole adult life, and it was really that it was mentioned earlier. I think the 8 Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter was the first book, my 10th book that I had written, but the first one that ever sold. So I always had this fear that it's going to end because it took so long to get started. So what it's like for me is I feel like I can't let up, you know. I feel like I'm in a car and the gas tank's almost empty. And so my theory is if I can get going fast enough, my momentum will take me to the next gas station. Right. That's what it feels like to me.
Well, you've driven very fast and very far in the last 10 years. So A Dog's Perfect Christmas, which is a wonderful book. I read it over the weekend. It's your second Christmas book, second dog Christmas book. There it is. Beautiful cover. I have to say, the funny thing is the book is set in Traverse City, Michigan. Second book in 2 weeks I read set in Traverse City, Michigan. I read Chasten Buttigieg's autobiography, his memoir. He grew up in Traverse City, Michigan. The whole thing almost all of it takes place in Traverse City. So that was a kind of a coincidence. You are from Michigan.
Yeah, from Michigan. It's actually pronounced Traverse City. People
yeah.
Who live there. Yeah.
Unlike we traverse the snow, it is something that's different. Traverse. Yeah.
Right. There's a car that's a Traverse, but this is Traverse. Okay. I'm sure in Traverse City they go, hey, look, there goes one of those Traverse cars. I grew up I was born in Michigan, grew up in Michigan, although my father was a professor of medicine in the University of Kansas. So I spent my school year in Kansas, and then we would go to Michigan in the summers. I was lucky enough because I had grandparents who lived up there, and so we would go visit my grandparents and live on this little island up in Michigan, and that's how I was raised in those 2 places.
So how did you pick Traverse City then as a location?
The reason why Traverse City came to mind is that I know it pretty intimately, and I did live there for 3 years in the 80s, and so I wanted to capture a small town without having the small town be a character. Like small towns are different than big cities, but you don't, not so you notice. I mean, it's not like people wake up every day and they say, oh, there's another, gunfighters shooting in the streets in the Buffalo, or, that's not what happens in small towns. But they do have a different feel. And I wanted to capture that in this book, A Dog's Perfect Christmas. And so I wanted it to have a suburban feel because she's the 8th grade girl is going to a suburban high school, but it's not like she goes in a city where there's like 9 high schools, not like a city. So that's what I wanted. And then, there's just something about the slide of the season from fall, which is glorious in Michigan, to winter, which is, when November comes around, the sky turns gray and it just stays that way. And the people are used to it and it's all fine. But I kind of wanted that to be the backdrop for all the outdoor scenes, is how the winter's approaching, and some snow, and that's how it is up there.
You know, you paint a really vivid picture of that location. So really well written about that. So anyways, it's your second dog Christmas book. The first one was The Dogs of Christmas. That was 2013, came out 2013.
Sounds right.
So why 7 years before another Christmas book, and what caused another Christmas book altogether?
Yeah, it's a great question without a great answer, because The Dogs of Christmas was kind of a lark. I was asked by my publisher if I'd be willing to for one of the bookstore chains to write a short story. And so I said, well, I would write a short story about a guy who accidentally inherits some puppies, and he's got to adopt them out by Christmas. And my publisher said, I want that as a book. So we did a book deal. It was it's not a huge book. It's not 100,000 words. It's like 60,000 words, I think. And then, the reason it's not a great answer is the book has The Dogs of Christmas has sold a ton of books every Christmas. And so my publisher started saying, we want another one of these. These books, because they look nice, they're inexpensive. It's like a $14 book, and I'm sure you could buy it for a lot less. Fits in a stocking. So
say it doesn't read like, is it considered a novella or a novel?
I think it straddles the line between a novel and a novella. It was supposed to be shorter, but I couldn't let the characters go when I needed to.
Because it totally feels like a totally full-length book and a completely full, rich story. So don't undersell it. I mean, it's a lot going on in this book. So how did you? So many of your books have been about the dog's point of view, humans coming into a dog's life as opposed to the other way around. I think this is your first one really where it really sets up the family. It's really a family story with a dog, and the dog comes into the family at a time when they're making this change, and you try, and there's a lot going on, and the dogs in the book really help the family through it. But it's a very different perspective. Was that purposeful, or was that just the way it turned out?
It really was purposeful. I wanted to write a book where everything looks like it's just going to get worse and worse. And then a dog shows up, and the dog is the catalyst for things turning around, although it's not evident to anybody, even the reader, when that happens.
Right.
So,
there's you ready to turn things around.
The dog is here to turn things around. So but I love that you picked that up, because a lot of people, the title makes it sound like it's another dog point of view. That was, a lot of people fought over the title. They wanted, we eventually, I kept saying, I've been calling it the Untitled Cameron book. And they're saying, we don't think we could sell that. So
not a snappy title.
So anyway, that's what happened with The Dog's Perfect Christmas. It looks like it's an invisible book, but it really, honestly, it's substance. It's got substance, I swear. Yeah. So good question. I lost track of what I was saying.
So I'll just keep going. So in terms of coming up with this story, it's a different kind of story for you. You weave this really great family story about these really vivid characters in a family. I think they're people we all relate to. I feel like I know a lot of these people. They're just really fun and really dimensional. And the dogs don't have their point of view. The dogs speak to them a little bit, but not as much. And yet the dogs are wonderful characters too. How did you just come up with this story? It was because it is a different kind of story for you.
Yeah. So I started with the root, like what happens to a family if a dog shows up at Christmas, and I think that Christmas is a difficult holiday for a lot of people. We build up these huge expectations around the holidays. And, I used to say that everything that we did once then became a tradition, because then you had to do it again because that's what you did last year. One year my dad had taken his hearing aids out and he thought they were peanuts and he fed them to the dog. So I said, are we going to do that every year now? We're going to go out in the snow with a bucket and look for the hearing aids. And so that, So that's the kind of stress that it puts on people. And I thought, and now I'm gonna show what happens. This is a normal family, the Goss family. I don't think I set them up. Nobody's a monster. Nobody's insane. Although an eighth grade girl has every reason to be insane, and they are kind of crazy. But she's a good person. Her 3-year-old twin brothers are an absolute force of destruction, but that's because they're 3-year-old twin boys. And so these are not bad people at all. These are good people that some bad stuff's happening to, and it's getting worse. And then the dog shows up. And of course, I'll plot spoil a little bit. Everything depends on mom. Mom is this former litigator who runs the family, and she has her lists and everything goes perfectly because she's in charge. But then mom is taken out of the picture by an illness. And so now it's up to this family to step up and try to make the Christmas that they want. I don't think they wind up with the Christmas they want. I think they wind up with the Christmas they deserve, and they're a deserving family.
Right, well, a lot of it is they're trying to do a Christmas that the mother would want, because she's the one who loves Christmas, and she's almost not there to see it. But ultimately, what's so beautiful about the story is how what happens to the mother brings the whole family together. All these people who are all off in their own worlds, and particularly the grandfather, who's a great character, somebody who's mourning the death of his wife from was it 5 years ago, something like that, and
a couple years,
a couple of years, and he's just so depressed, and suddenly he lights up and ends up really participating in his family's life, and they all live together. And what I love is that trio of women, the trio of widows that you created, that he runs into in the park one day, and suddenly he's like the new hot thing on the block. He's a man of a certain age who's breathing, and so they all go after him. I love that whole creation of those women. They were really great. Well, are the family members, are they based on anybody in your family or your life?
No, I kind of don't do that. I've always just constructed characters in my mind out of whole cloth, because if I start basing them on people that I know, then I'm going to get pulled into, well, that's not exactly how this person would react. So I try to avoid that. And I know some authors, they absolutely base everything on people they know. I don't know how you do it, but you write like 30 or 40 movies a year, and I'm sure that you don't know that many people, so you must make some of them up.
I borrow from everybody. So.
Okay, yeah, right.
But I asked that question because the characters feel so real. They're so relatable, and as a family, they feel so real. And even the twins, these 3-year-old boys, they're just hilarious. Their personality is just complete destruction. That's all they're good for. And I love the fact that the mother's away, and the kids really don't even notice that she's gone. They're so in their little world. It's very funny. You referred to some of this about the mother being sick and all that. The book definitely has its darker moments. It's a very light. It's not. I don't think it's a lightweight book, but it's an upbeat, optimistic, fun story in many ways. But it's also got a lot of depth to it and a lot of heft because of what all these people are going through. And even for Ello, for the 13-year-old daughter, she's going through this major thing in her life that just for her is the be all and the end all. So it's not as bad as what the mother's going through, but for her, relatively speaking, it's a lot. The father's having major job issues. The grandfather is depressed and all these things. But so you deal with a lot of darker issues, and yet you keep the book very buoyant. Now what was that kind of writing something like that? What was the process for that? To not get too dark, to not get too light.
I love that question. I've written a lot of books that are told from the point of view of a dog, and a dog is always upbeat and buoyant and optimistic, and yet a lot of bad things have happened in my dog books. In A Dog's Journey, the mother is a really bad creature, much worse than she is in the movie version of A Dog's Journey. A Dog's Purpose, there's the first life of a reincarnating dog is with a hoarder, and the dog doesn't recognize how bad things are, but things are bad. And this woman has all these dogs that she shouldn't have. so I have written light, upbeat, uplifting stuff with dark clouds in it, and I think maybe I would say a silver lining can't exist if you don't have a dark cloud. So I feel pretty comfortable with the idea that if it's just all sugary and upbeat, it's not going to be as interesting. I even, I've got my children's book series. I've got 2 separate series, and even my chapter books for the very little kids, the Lily to the Rescue books. There's danger and there's threat. It's not ladled on heavily. It's not a horror movie or anything, but it's those books are as upbeat as there are usually dark moments, and usually animals, baby animals in danger is kind of the theme of Lily and the Rescue. And then Lily comes along and saves the day.
Well, it's a tricky balancing act, and you did a great job with it in this, because you can run the risk of being not necessarily too upbeat, but too sentimental, or just a little too tunnel visioned or small focused. And this isn't. I mean, this book has a lot of depth to it, within this great family, and I just think people are really going to enjoy it, particularly people who love reading about families. They're very real. I want to talk about the father's job. The father's job is so interesting to me. It's a very arcane sort of job, and he's sort of a bit of a loose screw, this guy, and yet he's got a job that's very, very organized. It's about organization. Talk about the job and how you came up with that. Hunter Goss is the father, and he is he's going through the biggest crisis of his work career, because his job is to manage a facility for a building full of software engineers. And if he's successful, he will probably run the facilities for the whole company, which has many branch offices. And so everything's on the line when he comes up with a plan to take the software engineers who are ensconced in cubicles, like they're warrened away and they don't talk to each other, and there's just problems with communication in the company, and they communicate by email, and it's just like being on Facebook. There's all this flamers that they send each other, and he comes up with this idea to make a more open, collaborative workspace, and to do so, he puts in millions of dollars worth of furniture. And then it doesn't go well at all. And so he sees that his job is on the line. I have, in my life, I was an operations vice president of operations for a software company, and one of my responsibilities was running the facilities. Mm-hmm. And we had very similar things happen with the software engineers in terms of trying to get them to talk to each other, because they didn't want to talk to each other. They wanted to sit and code, and that's it. But it was not working well for the company. So I was able to draw on some personal experience for that one. Right, and yet in the end, what Hunter does to bring everybody together is really, really genius, and the way his father, the way Sander, it's because of how Sander has opened up, and he's ready to kind of move on. That the way the pieces come together at the end is really great. And also the fact that so often in the holiday season, I know I'm somebody who I just give in to the holidays at a certain point, but I kind of just put them off because it seems like there's always so much to do before the holidays, just with your own life. And then the holidays are looming over you. And you really captured that so well. The tension of the holidays, the expectations of the holidays, and yet everybody's just trying to deal with real life. The mother being ill, and the father with his office, and the daughter with her romantic life and her friends and all. I mean, it's like there's so much going on, and it was so real to what people finally, they take a breath and they give up. And in the book, in the middle of the night, Ello decorates the Christmas tree, because it's like that's when she can finally do it, And it was a great representation, I think, of what really happens for people. It's like Christmas is not. This is not a presentation of Christmas as being this idyllic thing as it is for many people. It's something that people have to kind of get ready for, and they have to do their best with. And it's not, like Thanksgiving, you presented that part of it real well too. So that was really, really fun. What about your voice for Ello? I mean, here's this 13-year-old girl entering her teenage years. She's just a nightmare, but a good person, and all that. How did you channel that? Her dialogue is great. Her dialogue, what I love about her dialogue is that it's very realistic without pushing the kind of the teen part of it, the hip part of it or anything. It just feels like the way a kid would talk, but the way a human being would talk, which is very important. We don't always see that in presentations of kids.
Yeah, one of the things I like about A Dog's Perfect Christmas is that short for Eloise, when she finds out that her father has arranged for her to escort a new student around the school. And the father did that because the boy that she's going to be escorting is the son of his boss. So this is a good move for him, and this is good for his career. And she, of course, freaks out, and she describes this guy to her friends as, oh, he's going to be some farmer from Detroit, as she puts it. And the reason why I was able to tap into that is I've got a real close friend who's got a 13-year-old daughter, and I just sat on the phone with her and talked to her about how she describes things, and her, language changes, and people talk differently than they did when I was 13, back during the Civil War. And so it was so much fun to hear her peculiar way of seeing the world and the way she expressed herself. And on the one hand, she's very sophisticated compared to what I remember being like at age 13. And then on the other hand, she's a child. Right. And so I tried to capture that with Eloise. Eloise is being tortured by hormones, and we all remember that. It wasn't particularly fun. And we all remember surviving it somehow, but I don't know how. And so her stress points seem so mundane to an adult, and yet when you were in the middle of it, when you're 13 years old, the stresses, they feel like they're tearing you apart, and that's Elo. She's being torn. She's really in agony. She's anguished over all the tension and the stress of 8th grade.
Yeah. Well, you really heap it on her, and yet she rises to the occasion ultimately, with the story, which is so great. What do you think some of the themes are here? I mean, some of the themes of this book are kind of plainly stated. They're actually spoken, but there's a lot kind of underneath the story, I think. What are some of the kind of the hidden themes or the sub themes, do you think, of the story?
Well, I think that, when we meet this family, it seems like they're all separate planets circling a different star. They just are living their lives completely separate, and they seem antagonistic toward each other. They misinterpret each other. My character of Eloise has this, there's a scene very early in the book where she is critically assessing her mother's figure, and the mother thinks she is seeing the sags and the wrinkles that comes from having born 3 children, and yet what Eloise is looking at is how exotic and beautiful her mother is, and how unfair that is, because Elo feels like a fat cow. She's a 13-year-old girl. They all feel like they're fat cows, but that's just an example of the miscommunication that starts out. And so I think one of the themes that I like about this is how these people are a family and they belong together, but it takes something special to make them all see that. And I think what it means is if you're in the middle of strife within your own family, you need to understand one of the reasons why you're so angry is that you care so much about the other people.
Yeah, if they weren't your family, you wouldn't be so upset, and you wouldn't, because you do care and all of that. The family can make you feel things that nobody else would make you feel.
That's right. Yeah.
I think we have one more question before we open it up to the audience. But I want to ask you: is there a movie future in A Dog's Perfect Christmas?
Well, you know how this works, Gary, because you do it 40 or 50 times a year. We're going to be out with, we're going to take this out and we're going to see what happens. As you know, production is not happening much right now. So we've got some stuff on the shelf that we would surely love to see go into production. And I really believe that that it will once everybody can get back to work.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see. I certainly have hopes for A Dog's Perfect Christmas to be on the screen.
Yeah, well, I hope so. But Christmas movies are so popular, whether they're theatrical, whether they're streaming, whether they're cable, whatever. I mean, there's such a love for Christmas movies. So hopefully, A Dog's Perfect Christmas will be part of it. So anyway, hello, McKaylee.
Hello, I hated to interrupt you both. That was such a great conversation. I feel like I needed to, though, you two knowing each other for so long that you just kept talking. So we do want to open it up to the floor of our viewers. So there's a chat next to the screen that you're watching us on. Everybody's been very active in it so far. And so we'll be filtering questions through for a little bit. You can ask Bruce about his books, about Gary, and just asking them questions, and we'll see where the conversation takes us here. One of the first ones that popped up was, how does your writing process differ between your books and movie screenplays?
Good question.
Oh, yeah. A book is so much easier. You have freedom. And when I sit down to write a book, I have a goal in mind for the number of words. That's how you do books, is by words, not pages. And I'm aiming to start slowing down around 70,000 words. But if it keeps going because it has to, then it keeps going. In screenwriting, you sit down to write, that goes by pages. And if you sit down to write a movie and you've hit 120 pages and you haven't finished the movie, you have run into real trouble. You shove a 150 page screenplay at somebody, your name better not be Bruce Cameron. It needs to be like Cameron Crowe, because that's the only way you're going to get this thing done. So the very first process, and of course, the success that my writing partner, Catherine Michon, and I have had with our movies has been adaptations. And so I don't have the experience that Gary has of coming up with a screenplay from scratch and seeing it made into a movie and seeing his star on the Walk of Fame. And all. I don't have that. So what I have is I have my book, and I have to sit down and say, okay, now how much of this am I going to cut? Because there's no way, even a book that's a little shorter like this one is too long. If I just adapted it, if Catherine and I just sat down and took all the dialogue and everything and just put it up on screen, it'd be like, a 6-hour movie, and that's not going to work. So that's how the process differs, is I am under the gun and under a page count fatwa the second I start typing.
Gary, do you have anything you want to add to that about the screenwriting or playwriting process, being such a veteran of it yourself?
Yeah, thanks. I think, screenplays, unlike stage plays, screenplays definitely have a lot more structure to them. Like Bruce said, it can't be more than a certain number of pages. You gotta outline, you gotta really know what you're doing. I mean, I've written many stage plays and have not outlined. I know where I'm going. I know where the story beats are going to be, but I have not outlined. In a screenplay, I'm always outlining, because you just have to be very specific. Otherwise, you just sort of get caught short as you're writing it, and then you got to start all over again, or you just, your page 30, really, you've written twice as long as much as you need to. So that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a different process, and novels are very different from there. So yeah.
Pull out your Save the Cat template.
No, always a good one.
So we've got some other questions too, and I think this is a good question for both of you, just as an interesting one of, do you have a favorite book amongst Bruce's publications, or like a top 3 even? Bruce, I know this is probably harder because it's like probably picking your children, but Gary, I'd be interested in some of your favorites too.
Bruce has a book. I think it's one of the most brilliant books I've read in the since I've known Bruce, and it's called The Dog Master. And it's a genius of a book. I don't know how he wrote it. I don't really think he did. I think somebody else did. It's an amazing book, and I urge people to read it. I don't know if it was as successful as some of the other books, but it is a beautiful book about kind of the first dog, the wolf. And it's set in the past. It's a little sort of Clan of the Cave Bear, that kind of thing. It's an amazing book. It's very evocative, so beautifully written and very unique. So The Dog Master, love that book. A Dog's Purpose. I loved A Dog's Purpose, and the movie. Just don't get me started on the movie because I wept through the entire thing. I just embarrassed myself for that whole movie. So I love A Dog's Purpose. I'm trying to think what else. I think A Dog's Way Home. I thought was a really beautiful book. It was a little different than the other ones. It really took us on a journey. I love the movie that came of that. So those might be my top three. But definitely, people out there, go find The Dog Master. It's a great book.
Either at Vroman's or Tattered Cover.
Exactly.
I know it's hard for an author to pick their favorites, but do you want to chime in about maybe what was the most challenging book to write? That's often a way to twist that question.
I was laughing because your question implied that Gary had read my entire body of work, and I thought, well, that was not the assignment. We didn't say. Oh, by the way, you got to read all these books. Here they are, Gary.
All 27 of them in a week. Go.
I've always maintained that one of my best books is. Well, first I want to say thank you for your gracious words about The Dog Master. It was a difficult book to write. I am very proud of it. So thank you, Gary. I appreciate that. I'm going to go with Emery's Gift as being.
Emery's Gift, I forgot that one.
Thank you.
That's my number 4. Okay.
Emery's Gift is different. There's no dog in it. It has a grizzly bear on the cover. I think when I wrote it, I didn't realize that more people have dogs than have grizzly bears. And it didn't sell as well because it's not a dog book, but it's full of heart, and it's a parable, and there's a lot of stuff in there that I thought was me doing my best work. And then I've got a mystery series. The first one is called The Midnight Plan of the Repo Man. It's about a repo man down on his luck who winds up solving crimes, and it's hilarious. It gives me an opportunity to write really funny stuff, and every time I do a book event, somebody asks the question, when are you going to write the next one? I get that question every single book event I do, and the answer is, well, I know what the next 2 are. I just haven't had a chance to put pen to paper, but I have to say I really am proud of those 2 books. And then, I mean, come on.
You gotta have that on the list.
I'm really happy with this one. So that's my number 3. I just love the way that turned out. I just love, Gary said it, the characters talk to each other in a way that seems so real to me. I'm very proud of A Dog's Perfect Christmas.
Continuing on the train of writing and different styles and everything, I like this question as well. Do either of you have any superstitions or things that you have to do when starting a story?
Gary, do you have some ritual you perform every time, like killing a rabbit or something like that?
I don't. I hide under the desk for as long as I can, and then I just
avoid it.
I don't know. I really don't. I don't have any superstitions. I have habits and rituals, but not superstitions. How about you, Bruce?
Yeah, I don't have. I'm not a superstitious kind of guy, but I do know that I generally, when I'm getting ready to start a big project, I usually wind up like cleaning the kitchen or rearranging the bookshelf. I always find some task that has got nothing to do with anything that distracts me for several days.
Oh, procrastination.
Oh yeah, I am a good procrastinator.
As I'm sure many, many writers are. So continuing on with a multitude of questions here. We've got such great ones. Thank you guys for your continued awesome questions. It's hard for me to pick some. Let's see here. Oh, this is a fun one. How do you 2 know each other? How did you meet?
It's a very sordid story.
I pulled Gary out of the surf and performed mouth to mouth, and after we just felt close,
What can I say? He saved my life. The actual boring story is that we are both Writers Guild members, and we are both part of a committee at the Writers Guild called the Publicity and Marketing Committee. In my past life, I was a publicist. And so we started that committee. Has been around since, I don't know, it's probably 13, 14 years, something like that, a long time. And we just got to know each other from that. And like I said, I was there at the beginning of Bruce's dog book success, and know him from there. So less dramatic, but it's true.
Yeah, Gary is not only very successful, but I think it's coming across what a kind and empathetic human being is, and so it's really easy to appreciate someone like Gary.
Thank you. That's all gonna stop now, though. I have to tell you, it's all over.
After this interview, it's gone.
Gone.
So more questions that we've got coming here. Let's see. Oh, this is a good one. I'm sure, Bruce, you might get this question a lot, but why dogs and not any other pet? Like, why not cats? Why not something else? What is so appealing about writing about dogs?
Yeah, people say, when are you going to write A Cat's Purpose? And I say,
A cat's purpose is just to lay around.
I don't know what the purpose of a cat is, honestly. I think if I wrote A Cat's Purpose, it would make the cats mad. And it's my philosophy that I should never make a cat mad at me. So, look, there's a writer I know. His name is Michael Conley. He's one of the biggest bestsellers in the world, and he writes this character, Harry Bosch, and he's got some other characters now that he writes about, and they all are pretty dark and depressed, and they go through life without much joy, and even when bad things are not happening, they don't seem that happy. Whereas with dogs are just immensely happy constantly. And so I have my characters are these optimistic, joyful beings that never see the bad side of anybody. And I think I've got the better deal than Michael Conley. He may sell 1 billion more books than I do a year, but I don't care, because I don't have to sit down with Harry Bosch and write about that guy's dark moods at all. I sit down with a dog and I just write about how happy they are.
And I think during this health crisis, that's what we need right now. So thank you for that. I like this question because it's about your middle grade series of how does your process change when writing for children?
That's a great question. I have a middle grade series. We call them the puppy tales, and there's a lot of them now. There's Ellie's story, Bailey's story, Molly's story, Toby's story, all available at the Tattered Cover and Vroman's, and they are intended for kids 3rd to 6th grade, but adults read them because of that element of it's told from a dog point of view, and the dog is always happy. I started writing these because I wanted to address what teachers and parents were telling me, which was, a dog's purpose is perfect for my kid, but I read it and it's got a little intense stuff in there, and the dog dies, comes back to life, but it dies, and I just, and I thought, well, I can take the lives of these dogs and turn them into standalone books, and of course the dog doesn't die. And I started with Ellie's story just on a lark, and Ellie's story won awards, which I never won any awards. They won the Colorado Young Readers Award. So
yeah, you did.
I was astounded, and it sold a lot of books, and a lot of kids came up to me and said, this is my favorite book. So I started writing more of them. And what really happened for me, that, my whole life, I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to entertain people. And I had it in mind that I was entertaining people who looked just like me. I was entertaining grumpy old men who wanted to read books about helicopters crashing and spies shooting each other. And a lot of my first unpublished novels were that. They were these terrible thrillers that didn't thrill anybody. And that was going to be my purpose in life. And then now when I go to an elementary school and I talk to the children about what I see are kids that are reading and they're so excited. And I have had teachers and librarians come up to me and they say, I've got these reluctant readers. They won't read anything. but they'll read your books because the way in for them is a dog. It's not, they don't have to read about a baseball player or a ballerina or an astronaut or something that they can't really identify with, but they can all identify with a dog. So I think now I'm starting to understand that my work, my purpose as a writer is to write these younger children books because those are making a difference.
Thank you for that. And I know there's a lot of parents and a lot of kids out there that are very, very happy that those books exist. And I know that we sell a lot of them. I'm sure that Vroman's does as well. Oh, hi, Pup. So I think this is a really great question to end on. And we can tie you back in, Gary, too, with this question. But specifically, what did you learn about yourself or as a writer, or just a fun little fact while you were writing this book? What did this book teach you? Which I think, Gary, you talk about that as a reader.
I'll give my time to Gary.
Oh, what I learned as a reader, I think it just shows the power of family, and that's what I loved about it. You take all these disparate people who may, like I said before, may not want to be with each other if they weren't family, but they're brought together and they love each other and they find a way to make it work. And very often it takes something kind of bad to happen to bring people together and for better realize, I'm learning what's important in life. And I think the book does say a lot about, people prioritizing and really learning what's important in life and learning to move on, from things that have stopped them. So it's a great family story.
And how about for you, Bruce, as the writer? What did this book teach you?
When I started writing this book, my mother was still alive, and she died. She died almost a year ago. She died in November, so I wasn't by any stretch of the imagination finished with it. And I found she was my last surviving parent, and I found myself with a real hole in my heart where my parents had been, and so I was able to, in my mind, to capture this sense of especially Sander, the grandpa, who has lost his wife and kind of lost his way as a result. And he's bereft. He's not sure he wants to live anymore. He's got no reason to be alive. And then part of what happened for me was I'm the executor of my mother's estate. And it kind of wound up that I felt like I was still taking care of her because I was tracking down doctors and telling them she was no longer alive, and just do everything you do in association with a death is really taking care of the memory and of that person. It was like I was managing a living person. And so what I wanted to communicate when it comes to Sander was this utter sense of loss, and then how he finds his family. He finds a purpose with his family, which when we meet him, he has no use for these. He lives with them, but he sees them as servants, kind of. He wants his own world. He wants to sit in his room. And it's because of how hard he has been hit by the loss of his wife. And it's his family that brings him back. And it's his family. And there's a sort of a parallel story with an old dog. And then the puppy shows up, and the puppy sort of brings the old dog back. So that's what I discovered along the way, is that this was a way of healing something, of addressing something. I knew my mother would love this book, and I'm so sorry that she'll not have a chance to read it, because it would have made her very happy.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for your honesty and your vulnerability in that. And I know that's not been easy, but what a really wonderful memory to gift us with. And just thank you for that. Thank you for 27 books. Thank you for continuing to do it. I'm sure that I'm not the only one. Gary and I are not the only ones who have been just happy to be here tonight and celebrating this book release with you. So thank you so much for that. And look, we have Miss Catherine's here with the puppy waving by. Hello. So I do want to take a moment, though, before we close out officially, to give both of you a chance to remind people who you are, where they can find you online, and Just anything you want to do before we close out. Gary, will you start, and then we'll end with our man of the hour?
I'm not against the shameless plug. You can find me on Twitter at Gary Goldstein 7. A movie that I wrote called Forever Christmas is premiering on Lifetime this Sunday at 8 o'clock. It's a really fun movie.
Yay!
Check it out. And I write for the LA Times, so look for me there. And I've just had such a great time talking to Bruce, and he's one of my favorite authors and people, and I'm just so excited for his success all the time.
Yeah, if you don't see Gary's movie this Sunday, he probably has another one coming out next Sunday.
So it reruns a lot. So.
Well, that's true. That's true too. Well, I've been so honored to have Gary as the moderator of this conversation, if that's your official title, Gary. And congratulations on your movie. That's amazing. But you're amazing, and I'm honored to be your friend. And I have really enjoyed this. If you are interested in books for little kids, my series is called Lily to the Rescue. There are 4 of those out so far out of a planned 8. And if you're interested in books for younger readers, great Christmas gifts for younger readers, check out the Puppy Tales. Kids love those. And you can find me at wbrucecameron.com. And you can find me at adogspurpose.com. And you can find this book, A Dog's Perfect Christmas, pretty much wherever books are sold. I'd love it if you would contact Tattered Cover and Vroman, and I could sign a copy for you. And then it's been Tucker's honor to be here as well, and he's part of the process.
You've been a good dog this whole time. That's awesome. And I'm McKaylee with Tattered Cover Bookstore. You guys can visit us online at tatteredcover.com and get your signed copy, like Bruce said, or you can visit Vroman's at vromans.com for anyone in California there. You can shop local and support your local independent bookstores. We can't tell you guys how much we appreciate it. Sincerely, thank you for joining us this evening. If both of you gentlemen will stay on before I cut the feed. Thank you, everyone, and stay safe. Happy reading. Bye, all.